everyone, this is Anna with the PotomacBeads company, and today I'm going to show you how to make the cobblestone bracelet with this overlapping clasp in the back. And it's very comfortable to wear with that overlapping flap there against your skin. And you can see I've got 3 sections of this bracelet. 2 sections, the 2 sections here on either end are done in a 3-drop peyote stitch, and then the center section is done in just a plain single peyote stitch. And so I would recommend that you're familiar with peyote stitch before you start. And so for our project here, we've got a couple different beads we're using. We have the 11-0 seed bead, and I've got a couple colors in each one of the projects I'm doing. I've got a couple colors of those 11-0s. And then I have some 4mm Czech rounds, both faceted and smooth. And I've got a variety of colors of those. And then I've also got a pewter button here. So for my sample here, my seed beads, I've used a white lila luster, which is a very pretty pale pink, and then a matte white Celsian. The contrast I thought was just a charming pink color. And then I've got the center here, and I've got a ton of different beads in here. I have mint luster, tortoise, opal pink, red luster, brown iris, some black diamond. I think I have some matte bronze in there. So I've got quite a variety in there, and that's what makes that center section interesting, is having all that variety. So you are going to need, of course, those 11-0s and the 4mm Czech glass. For the project I'm working on today, I have my 11-0s here in the white champagne luster, and I'm also using some crystal lemon rainbows for some variety in there. And then I've got a variety of my 4mm glass rounds here in smooth and faceted. And the colors I'm using today for the project I'm working on is I've got a couple different colors here. These are the Golden Touch French Rose. The Golden Touch has that really nice golden shimmer on the outside, and that's a different kind of texture on the outside of a bead than I'm used to seeing. And then got some other texture in here. We have the white Lila Gold, which kind of gives me some of that marbling effect. I have a black diamond AB, and that's a really pretty smoky color with a little bit of that AB finish to it, so it's got a little sparkle to it. And then I have some smooth here, and these are a white cream luster, so that'll kind of add some contrast and lighten it up. So once you've got your beads picked out, oh, and I can't forget about my clasp, I do have a sunflower clasp here to use. So once you've got your beads, you're going to also need, of course, all of your tools. I have Wildfire here that I'm using in a 0.6 or a 0.006. I always prefer using the thinner Wildfire unless I need something thicker. I've always got a pair of my flat nose pliers nearby, and then I always have super glue glue and slip and snips or thread burner. These are the essentials that I will always have. So I'm going to go ahead and get my beads set up here. I've already got these guys cut and in a nice little pile. I'm going to go ahead and get myself set up here to do the first section of the bracelet where we start. And that's actually going to be using my 11-0 seed beads here to do the 3-drop peyote stitch. So these guys can go to the side for right now, and I'm going to get set up with my 2 11-0 colors, and I'm going to need my button. The first part of the bracelet that we're going to work on is the 3-drop peyote section that has the button attached to it. for 3-drop peyote, if you've not done that before, we're picking up units of 3 seed beads, and we're treating these essentially like one bead. And so just as in a flat peyote stitch, you would need to pick up an even number of beads to begin with, we need to pick up an even number of units of 3. And so that's what I've got here on my thread. I've got my stop bead here too at the end. And using my 2 different colors of seed beads, I've picked up an even number, in this case 6. I've picked up an even number of units of 3 seed beads. So I have 6 units of seed beads, each with 3 seed beads in the unit. And now we're going to treat this just like we would a regular peyote stitch. So now with my tail facing away from me, I'm going to pick up another 3 seed beads. And remember, that is 1 unit there, so we can pretend that that's all just 1 bead. And again, just like in peyote stitch, we're going to skip the first bead here and go through, pass through the second bead. So in this case, we are passing through our second unit of 3 seed beads. And pull all that tight. Pick up another unit of 3 seed beads. And again, skip 1 and pass through the next unit of 3. And we have to do this one more time here. Pick up 3 seed beads, and now I can go through that last unit of 3 next to my stop bead. And so here is the beginning of my 3-drop peyote stitch. So now, just like you would see in a regular peyote stitch, I do have some of my units sticking up, and I have some of my units that are going to be recessed. And now I'm ready to make my next pass here and add my next row of peyote. So I'm going to pick up another 3 11-ohs and skip the first bead, pass through the second, and I said bead, but I meant unit. Pick up another unit of 3, skip a unit, and pass through the next unit. Pick up another unit of 3, and again skip a unit and pass through the next unit, which is now the last unit for me. So I'm going to continue in my 3-drop peyote stitch until I've got it about half an inch long, and then I'm going to be ready to add my clasp into it. So when we are all at about half of an inch, we will come back and add our clasp. I've now worked my peyote stitch, my 3-drop peyote stitch, for about half an inch here. And at about half an inch is where I want to add my button closure. So to do that, I'm going to start my peyote stitch, and I've got one of my units of 3 here, and I'm going to continue with my my peyote stitch like I have been. And when I come to that second unit of 3 that I need to pick up, I'm going to also pick up my button closure. So I'm picking up 2 of my 11-ohs, my button closure, and then another 11-oh. And after I've got my button closure there on my thread, Now I'm ready to go through the next set of the next unit of seed beads that I need to continue with my peyote stitch. And I'm going to finish up the end here by picking up another 3 and going through that last set, that last unit of 3 there. And this will finish this row of peyote stitch. So now what I've done is, in my row of peyote stitch, I've added and I've trapped my cup button in one of those units of 3. I'm going to come down here and add another row of peyote stitch. So picking up a unit of 3 and going through that second unit of 3. Picking up another unit of 3, skipping one and going through the unit of 3 that is now in my cup, in the shank of my button. So I'm going to take my needle through all 3 of those seed beads that are running through the shank of my button. Pick up another 3 seed beads, skip a unit, and then go through that last unit there. So now I've completed another row of my 3-drop peyote stitch. And I'm going to do another one here. So I've got my unit of 3, and I'm going to skip one and go through that second one. Pick up a unit of 3 here, and I'm going to skip the unit of 3 here that's running through my button shank, and I'm going to come around my button shank here and run through the set of 3 just on the opposite side of that shank. And I need one more set of 3 here, and go through that last unit of 3. And so now I've got my 3-drop peyote with my button thoroughly surrounded there. And I'm going to continue working with my 3-drop peyote here. And from this point on, I don't have to worry about having my button there. I can just continue skipping one and running through the next unit as we do in peyote. And now I'm ready to make another pass and another row of peyote, my 3-drop peyote. So now I'm going to work in that 3-drop peyote pattern for another 2 inches. And then at the 2-inch mark, what we'll do is switch over to using our 4mm beads for our center section of our bracelet. I've now worked another 2 inches in my 3-drop peyote stitch. I've done ½ an inch here before my cut button, or before my pewter button here that I'm using, and then I've done another 2 inches past my shank here of my button, for a total of 2½ inches for this piece of the bracelet. And now I'm ready to move on to the second piece of the bracelet, which is going to be my 4mm beads in a simple peyote stitch. Before I move on to that, I wanted to show you the little chart that I've been using. For me, I'm going to wear about a 7½ inch bracelet, and so I've divided my 3 sections up this way. My first section, which I've just completed here, is 2½ inches, and if you notice, it's 1/2 inch longer than the last section there, because I want that extra 1/2 inch here before my button, so that, let me show you here on my sample, so that when I clasp it, that extra 1/2 inch will overlap on the back. And so that is what that extra 1/2 inch there is for. So my first section here that is done with my 11-ohs in that 3-drop peyote stitch is 2.5 inches, and that has the button on it. And then I move on to my section that I'm working with 4mm, and that is about 3 inches long. And then I'm going to do that 2-inch section coming back to my 3-drop peyote stitch. So if you want to write this down, this will help you just remember the way that I've broken down the bracelet. And then I also have a note here on the bottom. The number of 4mm beads that you're going to need is going to be someplace between 120 and 140 beads. And that is going to be 4 strands of beads. And so I've got the 4 colors here because I was using whole strands. So if you are using a mixture of things that you have at home and you need to get some strands to supplement them, you want to find out how many beads you have and then buy enough more to get you up to somewhere between 120 and 140 beads, depending on if you need to lengthen the center section. I think I'm going to use actually probably close to 130 beads today. So just a quick note on that. And now I'm ready to move on to my center section here. So like I said, the center section is a very simple peyote stitch. And what I'm going to do here, I've got my thread coming out the bottom. That's a thread here from when I tied on, so I want to make sure that I don't grab that. So with my thread and needle here, I'm just going to start picking up my 4mm beads, and I'm going to pick them up randomly. Try not to put too much thought into it because you want it to look random. And then I'm just going to take my needle, and like we've been doing, I'm going to skip that first section here, or that first unit of 3. And as with all peyote stitch, I'm going to go through the first unit there that's sticking up. Grab another 4mm and go through my second section there that's sticking up. And another 4mm and go through my last unit there of 3 that's sticking up. So now you've got a few of your 4mm beads added there, and I'm going to come back and fill in the rest of my 4mm. Again, just working in a very simple peyote stitch. And I'm going to do my 3rd row here. And again, I'm just picking up my beads, skipping the first, going through that second bead. Picking up a new bead, skipping one and going through the next. Picking up a new bead and skipping one and going through the next. So now we're just doing a simple peyote, and I'm going to work on that peyote for about 3 inches. I've now done 3 inches of my peyote stitch, just my single peyote stitch here with my 4mm beads, and I'm ready to move on to the last piece of the project here, which is going to be repeating my 3-drop peyote stitch. So I've got my thread here coming out the bottom, and like in all single peyote stitch, I will have every other bead here sticking up here above the rest. And I'm going to move on to my 3-drop peyote stitch now. So I'm moving back to picking up the 3 11-ohs, my units of 3. And I'm going to pick up that first unit of 3 and skip that bead there right on the end and go through that first of my 4mm that's sticking up. Picking up another unit of 3 and going through my next bead that's sticking up. And through that last bead. Flip my project and ready to move on with my next row of 3-drop peyote. So I'm picking up a unit of 3 here, and now I'm going through each one of my sections of 3 that I put on that I added on to that previous row. So I'm skipping my 4mm beads and going through just the units of 3 that I added on my previous row. And through the last one here. And I always flip this. I always flip it so I have my thread facing me, so just a little easier for me to have it oriented that way. And I'm going to continue here with my next row, picking up units of 3. Skipping the first and going through that second one. A unit of 3 here. And going through, skipping and going through the next. And adding my last unit of 3 here. And going through the last unit of 3 at the top there on the end of, on that outside edge. And I'm going to flip it here, and I'm going to continue with my 3-drop peyote for another 2 inches, and that should give me the full length of the bracelet. And then I'm going to add my loop for my clasp. So what we're going to do is another 2 inches here of that 3-drop peyote, so that we've got a total of 2 inches of that 3-drop peyote, and then we'll add a loop here for our button clasp. I've now completed 2 inches of my 3-drop peyote, and I'm ready to add the loop at the end here that's going to be for my pewter button here. I have my thread coming out of the end here through that last unit of 3 that I added, and I need to have my needle coming out of the unit of 3 above and to the left of it. So instead of tying off this thread and adding on a new thread, I'm just going to work my way around a few beads here to bring it up to where I need it to be. I'm going to take my needle and run down the side here. I'm going to go through the set of 3 directly below the set of 3 that I'm coming out of. And then I'm going to move to the top, to the unit of 3 here that is above and to the left, and run through that unit. And that is the unit that is sitting directly below the unit I want to be coming out of. So then I'm going to take my needle and run through that unit that's sitting directly above the unit that I'm coming out of. So now I've got my thread coming out of this second unit in here from the right side, and it is one of those units that is sticking up above. So now I'm ready to add my loop for my clasp. I need to pick up 23 beads. And the number of beads that you pick up may vary depending on what button you use. If you do use one of our pewter buttons, 23 is probably going to be about where you need to be, but you will want to test it around your button before you finish this off to make sure that your loop is going to be large enough to accommodate your button. So now with my 23 beads on, I'm going to take my needle and on the opposite side, opposite end of my project here, I'm going to take my needle and run it through that last set of 3, that last unit there, and one of the ones that is poking up above the rest. And similarly to what I did on the other side, I'm going to take my needle and run through the set of 3 directly where I'm coming out. And I'm going to run through the unit of 3 that is to the bottom left now. And I'm going to jump up to the unit of 3 sitting right on top of the one that I just ran through. And now I'm in position here. I've got my thread coming out between the unit of 3 sitting next to my line of 23 beads here, and I have one unit of 3 here where I brought my thread in after picking up that unit of 3. So my thread here is coming out between these 2 units of 3. I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to do again a simple peyote stitch and pick up my first bead there in my line. And I'm going to pick up a second bead and work just in a very simple peyote stitch around my loop here, picking up a bead, skipping one, and going through the next. I've now completed adding the peyote stitch to the outside of my original 23 beads. I have my thread here coming out the bottom of that line of 23, and I'm just going to take my needle here, run it through that unit there of 3 to the right, so that I'm now on the outside of my project. And I'm going to just take a knot here, just put a little knot there, and then work back ways in my project for a few beads or so. And then I like to tie another knot and tie off my project. So I'm hiding the tail end of my thread somewhere in the middle of my project so it's not sticking out on the end. So now I'm ready here to cut off that tail. and just get a nice close cut. And my project is complete. So now you've got a beautiful bracelet with that a lot of variety in it. You've got variety in your seed beads. This nice center section here really switches up the scale of the bracelet, going from this small design to something that's larger and has a lot of variety. And then it's also going to be really comfortable to wear when you add your clasp here and you add that on your wrist. That's really going to be comfortable with that overlapping there in the back. Hope you guys are going to really enjoy making this project. And it's a simple one, so it's a good one for somebody who is just looking for something a little bit different to do with peyote. And it's also a great one for beginners who are even just learning peyote, just to kind of throw some variation there in with what you've already been doing. So thanks for watching.